everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Jeff Hurd. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Brittany, it's great to join you.
I'm really excited for the conversation today because it comes off the heels of a very busy night. The GOP passed their budget plan, but before we get into that, this is your first term. You're representing Colorado's 3rd district. So to start off the conversation, how has your first few weeks in Congress been?
Well, it's been busy and a little bit surreal. There's so many great things going on. Getting an office set up, of course, it keeps me busy, but also visiting lots of people coming in from the district, and then also committee work, work on the floor. It's been kind of a whirlwind, would be how I describe it, but it's been great, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm curious as to what your priorities are this first term in Congress, because as you know, Republicans represent the House, or they have majority of the House, they have majority of the Senate. Also, President Trump is a Republican, so you control all 3 levers of government right now. So what's on the docket for you?
Well, first of all, it's a great opportunity to get things done for America when you have that unified control of government. And I think it's incumbent on us as Republicans to deliver on that. So the priorities are the ones that we campaigned on in this last election, from the president on down: securing the border, growing our economy, particularly when it comes to energy, unleashing American opportunity, reducing those regulations that make life harder and more expensive for families and small businesses across America, and as in my district, in the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado.
I think this conversation really comes at an interesting time. I think you can offer some unique perspective here because when I have conversations with lawmakers, especially first term Congress members, I ask them what it's like working across the aisle as well as the conversations within their own party. And I'm sure there have been many interesting conversations, especially yesterday during those budget framework negotiations. And the GOP has a slim majority that was on full display last night, couldn't really afford to lose many votes when it came to that. All but one defected when it came to voting for that resolution. No Democrats supported it, though. So, how were those conversations? What did they look like?
Well, typically, when it comes to budget resolutions, that tends to be more of a partisan exercise regardless. It's Republicans voting for the Republican budget. Democrats will vote against it. If the shoe's on the other foot, it kind of tends to be a little bit more of a partisan exercise. What I will tell you, though, what is interesting as a member of Congress is when you're on the floor of the House and there's these long delays that people are seeing on C-SPAN where they're like, gosh, what's going on? How come this bill is not being gavelled out, which means basically, decided and finished. What's really interesting is I've seen people will come and talk, including across the aisle. Literally, Democrats will go across the aisle, talk to Republicans. Republicans will go across the center aisle and talk to Democrats about legislation that they're proposing. And so, in ways that we can work together, to help our country and help the state of Colorado in my case. And so during those times of lull when we're waiting on the floor of the House, oftentimes that's when a lot of really productive work gets done. So people on TV say, oh, they're just like chatting on the floor. And sometimes it is about kids or family, but oftentimes it's about, hey, I've got this legislative issue that impacts your district. Let's see if we can work together on it, both in the Republican conference and also Republicans working with Democrats.
That's really interesting, and I wanna get to that first. I love talking about bipartisanship first before we get into, the splits here and the disagreements. So, were those conversations did you have any of those last night? Did you have any in your first couple of weeks of talking with Democrats saying, "Hey, we don't agree on X, Y, and Z, but here's where we can find sort of a compromise"?
Well, when it comes to issues that matter to my district, certainly reconciliation, it tends to be a little bit more of a partisan exercise, simply because you don't need to have 60 votes in the Senate. But when it comes to issues outside of reconciliation, budget reconciliation, we need to pass that 60 vote majority in the Senate. And so, pragmatically speaking, we need to make sure that we have bipartisan support for a lot of this legislation. And so, it's important for me, both within the House of Representatives, to talk to Democrats that will support legislation that benefits my district and my state, but also working with, in my case, Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper on the Senate side, who are both Democrats, and making sure that we advance legislation that helps the district as well. And so I'm already sponsoring legislation that they're going to be carrying in the Senate as well. And having those connections, those contacts, is really critical. And what I'll also tell you, Brittany, is we had breakfast this morning as a Colorado delegation, Republicans and Democrats. And that's not something that you're going to see on TV. But that's one instance where there are things that we disagree on, and we are clear on those things, but there are other things that we agree on, and we're going to work together as Republicans, as Democrats, as members of the House, as members of the Senate to get things done and advance the ball for our constituents and for our country.
And that's always heartening for me, at least as an American, to hear. I'm sure for our viewers, because I've had Democrats come on here, I've had Republicans come on here and say, hey, there are areas of disagreement, but it's not this crazy thing where we can never agree, we can never come to the table. A lot of the time, we're joking together, we're laughing together. We can also have legislation where we see eye to eye on. I am curious now if we could pivot to maybe some of the harder conversations within your party and maybe with your constituents, especially as we're looking in the lens of those budget framework negotiations, because Politico did identify you as one of those House Republicans with an above average number of constituents who rely on Medicaid, around 30%. And this budget plan assigns the Energy and Commerce Committee, which we know manages policy surrounding Medicaid, to find over $800 billion in cuts. So, how do you square that away with your constituents? What did your conversations look like with Republicans when you're saying, hey, a lot of my constituents rely on Medicaid, and they're not going to be pleased to hear we are slashing it by billions, hundreds of billions in the next 10 years?
Well, I think we need to see exactly what the details are from this proposal. I mean, the budget resolution sort of unlocks the reconciliation process, and what exactly the specifics are going to look like remain to be seen. What I will tell you is rural healthcare is really important for my district. I know Medicaid is an essential part of the delivery of healthcare service in rural Colorado. In my district, my father ran a federally qualified health center, and I know the importance of Medicaid funding. So when it comes to those issues, I think we'll have to see and talk through the reconciliation process and what the specifics of any adjustments or efficiencies would be. But what I would tell you is fundamentally, I recognize and see the importance of delivering healthcare in rural Colorado, and I know that Medicaid has an important function and important role in that healthcare delivery system.
This budget resolution has really been described as the blueprint of the Trump agenda as he entered his second term just a few weeks ago. And I want to talk about what you think of the first few actions of the Trump administration, round two, second term. So here's what's happened so far, just to name a few things. We've seen him sign a host of executive orders and actions on a lot of things he campaigned on, like immigration, like border security. We've also seen cuts and layoffs from the DOGE department. Trade wars with our allies were almost started and paused. One was started with China. The president has made a slew of different expansionist comments, including floating the idea of the United States reclaiming the Panama Canal, Canada becoming the 51st state, the United States buying Greenland, and the United States taking over Gaza. And many of President Trump's cabinet nominees have become confirmed and have hit the ground running in their roles. That's just scratching the surface here. So, what do you think so far about the Trump administration's second term within the past couple of weeks?
Well, he's gotten off to a busy start for sure, and there's been a flurry of executive orders. What I would say is I'm trying to stay focused on the things that I know the best, and those are things in my district when it comes to public lands issues, energy development, the importance of securing the border, those sorts of things. I know are critical to making sure that we deliver on the promises we ran on as Republicans, and so I recognize the importance of saving money and efficiency when it comes to government and the services that we deliver. I think we just need to make sure that we're smart about the places that we make those cuts. Um, let's cut the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., but let's make sure that the Forest Service employees that are on the ground, that are actually maintaining the trails, managing our forests, managing our public lands, don't lose their jobs. And so I think, as we go forward, we're going to make sure that we make those cuts. They're absolutely essential. The president campaigned on them. I'm excited by the idea of efficiency and government savings, but let's make sure that those cuts happen in the right spot. And that's something that we're going to be working with the administration, have been working with the administration on, is making sure that the folks that are on the ground, the boots that are on the ground, are there and able to make sure that we deliver the services that we need to deliver.
When you say that cuts need to be made in the right spot, are you referring to DOGE using what some have described as a hatchet approach opposed to a scalpel, where jobs are being slashed and then it's almost like, hey, maybe that was too much. Maybe we need that person. Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe some of it, but I'm sympathetic with the administration's desire to make government more efficient and more responsive to the people. I mean, there is a heck of a lot of bureaucratic bloat that we see here. My message when it comes to these cuts is let's make sure we're making them in the right spot. It should be the bureaucrats that are here in Washington, D.C., and it shouldn't be the folks that are on the ground in our districts across the country. And so I think the message is those cuts are necessary, they're important, but let's make sure that we're doing them in the right spot.
I'm from Pennsylvania. Right now, I live in New York. I work in New Jersey, as you can see by the background. So I feel like I understand where voters from Pennsylvania have vastly different objectives and goals and needs than voters in New York, than voters in New Jersey. And I'm sure you have that same perspective as voters in Colorado. You lived in New York before. You mentioned energy in this conversation. Obviously, Trump's administration has touted unleashing American energy as one of their priorities. So, what unique perspective could you bring to that conversation?
Well, my background is as an energy lawyer in Colorado. And what I've learned in my law practice is that bad energy policy effectively acts as a hidden tax on every single American, not only in what you pay in your electricity bill, but also what you pay at the gas pump, what you pay at the grocery store, when you fill up your cart with food. And the importance of having a thoughtful energy policy that keeps electricity low cost, reliable, affordable, and that we have the resources that we need, the hydrocarbons that we need to power our economy. And we can do so also in an environmentally responsible way. And that's something that I think I know that we can do. And I've seen it myself, and I'm going to champion it. This is an area that, like I said, I have a little bit of familiarity with. And so that's absolutely a priority in this Congress for me, is keeping energy costs low cost, reliable, affordable. And we can do that.
Congressman, I know that you just started your first term. President Donald Trump just started his second term, but we're in a really unique time right now, almost unprecedented, where President Trump is starting back up his second term, but in a non consecutive way. So we also are looking to the future of the GOP. And I'm curious to get your insights on what that exactly looks like. JD Vance, the vice president, overwhelmingly won the majority of the CPAC straw poll. So, what does the future of the Republican Party look like to you?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot that remains to be seen. Fundamentally, we need to deliver on the promises that we campaigned on. And so, what 2026 looks like, what 2028 looks like, I think depends on how effectively we can work together and deliver that agenda of securing the border, of growing our economy, of unleashing American energy in an environmentally responsible way, in making life easier for families, in making sure that the cuts that we make in government, which are absolutely essential, are cuts in the right place. And what the future looks like politically is going to depend a lot on how effectively we govern in the next 2 years and the next 4 years. And so I think it's incumbent on us as Republicans, on us as members of Congress, to focus on getting those results. And then we'll see in the future what the election polls look like.
And my last question to you is, as we look at the first month of the Trump administration, it would be hard to talk about that without bringing up Elon Musk. You're saying, hey, we need these cuts, but we need them to be responsible here. Elon Musk has been criticized. He's also been praised over DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. In a conversation I had with some first term members of Congress, other side of the aisle, they've essentially said, hey, he's the shadow president. He's acting as the president. They were very critical of Elon Musk. What do you think of his performance?
Well, I think that bringing an outside perspective to government and government efficiency is something that's essential. And I'm excited to see where uh, Elon believes that these cuts can be made, and his team believes these cuts can be made. But ultimately, we need to make sure that we're doing so, again, responsibly. But I think government could use a little bit of a shakeup. And I think it's important for us to look at things from all angles, um, and evaluate things in a thoughtful, careful way. And then when we implement them, we need to make sure that they're done in a responsible way.
Congressman, I really appreciate the conversation today. I appreciate your insight on these wide ranging topics. You are welcome back anytime. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I hope to see you again soon.